The Oregon Trail and Territory by Sarah, Evan, Starr, and Sydney.
And this is History in 4. Our guest today is Professor Jesvold, who teaches about the Oregon Trail at Cambridge University. Good morning and welcome, Professor.
Good morning.
So let's get right to the chase. What is the Oregon Trail truly about?
The Oregon Trail itself is the trail that extended from Independence, Missouri, all the way to the Columbia River in Oregon.
And what exactly happened on the trail?
First off, we should talk about the Oregon Territory itself. In 1819, Oregon was claimed by Russia, Spain, Great Britain, and the United States. Spain dropped out first. Years later, Russia dropped out too, which left the last two nations to agree to a joint occupation. The United States claimed Oregon after the Lewis and Clark expedition. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark led a small band of explorers to the Oregon coast. Lewis thought many more Americans would follow the path after he traveled it, but the route was too rugged for ordinary adventure travelers. About 20 years after the Lewis and Clark expedition, Jedediah Smith, a young fur trapper, discovered a better way. Smith found a passage through the Rocky Mountains named the South Pass. The South Pass was low and flat enough for wagons to use. Missionaries were the first Americans to travel west. Oregon's good soil, rich forests, unclaimed land, and beautiful weather, and a new start attracted more settlers. In 1843, 1,000 pioneers packed up and headed west.
How did America claim Oregon?
In 1844, President Polk didn't want to start any wars, but he really thought Oregon would benefit the country. So he decided to compromise with the other country claiming Oregon, which was Great Britain. He decided to divide Oregon in half at the 49th parallel.
Very interesting. Now, I've heard from many people different opinions about traveling west. Was it all peachy and easy as the living in Oregon was, or was it horrendous?
The journey to the Oregon Territory is by far the most difficult part, crossing over 2,000 miles of wilderness and passing through 6 different states. Sounds terrible to me.
So besides the distance, what else made the journey difficult?
Well, despite common belief, Indians were an extremely minor problem, and Indian attacks were very rare.
So Indians were a minor threat, but what was the main cause of death among settlers?
Well, for the most part, disease such as cholera and dysentery were the main killers, as well as death by the elements, wild animals, and especially drowning. No wonder 1 in 10 settlers died.
What prevented pioneers from taking action against these hardships?
Well, the distance that the settlers had to travel, as well as difficult terrain, made it hard to carry more than the bare necessities. Also, unless you had a doctor among your group, there was no access to medical personnel.
I see. Now let's talk about those mountain men. When I think of mountain men, I think of hairy old hobos. Who are they really?
Mountain men were groups of men who set up traps in icy streams in the spring and fall and traveled to trading posts to swap furs for supplies in July. Mountain men often had a lot of hardships they faced, just like the pioneers. They had to deal with fur thieves, Indians, wolves, and bears attacking them. An example would be a man named Hugh Glass. Glass was mauled by a mother bear that threw chunks of his flesh to her hungry cubs until his friends rescued him.
That's terrible and utterly disturbing. What were these mountain men known for? How exactly did they help open the West?
The mountain men explored most of the West while they were busy trapping fur. The routes they traveled crossed mountains and deserts, which later became the Oregon and California trails. Their trading posts turned into supply stations for settlers moving west along those trails.
I have one more question. What did this whole deal with Oregon have to do with the so-called Manifest Destiny?
Dun 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 dun!
America gaining Oregon helped our country gain more pride and spread our land. Manifest Destiny is all about spreading our country, and that's what we did.
Thank you, Professor Jesvold. That is all we have time for. Stay tuned for the next episode of History in 4.
We got our information from
Our textbook.
Woo!